Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. What a day. What an incredible day, an emotional day, a sad day, an exciting day in some respects as well. A long day, definitely. It is way past midnight here in Seoul in South Korea. But I just felt I had to do a video, had to get it out there because today is the day that Heung-min told us that after 10 wonderful years of memories galore that he's given us, he was going to be leaving Tottenham Hotspur. And I felt incredibly privileged to be there as he said that. I felt incredibly privileged to be able to ask him about it here in his homeland as well. And I also felt incredibly privileged to be able to break the news in the early hours with Jay Harris from The Athletic that it was going to happen. And look, while I mentioned at the start of this that you might have thought, oh, strange words, exciting day, when we're talking about the kind of departure of what an utter legend Sonny is, I've got to admit, from a journalistic point of view, it was an incredible feeling to be able to kind of break the news that one of the biggest stars the Premier League has had, one of the game's biggest stars, that break the news essentially that he told the club that he wanted to leave and was set to do so. And then that very remarkable, legendary player goes and confirms that in a press conference. So as a journalist, of course, that's what my job is ultimately to do. And it was incredibly exciting to not only report on it beforehand, but then chronicle and report on everything that has come since. It has been a remarkable day. I've had some great days as a journalist in terms of, the wonderful night in Bilbao, of course, the parade that we had afterwards, the night in Amsterdam, the finale at White Hart Lane. But this kind of actually is going to sit in there for me as to see such a legendary player like this kind of open up their heart about what comes next for them after so long of becoming such a wonderful player at, the football club that I not only report on, but also have supported, from the moment I entered this universe. So, yeah, it's been a special day in so many different ways. And of course, this day is all about Son Heung-min. What a perfect way for him to bow out. I'm going to be incredibly sad to see him go when that, goodbye video eventually hits, which we know it's going to be coming. It's going to be an incredibly, incredibly emotional one. And I think we'll all be asking who's chopping onions. Of course we will. But, I just have this feeling that it is the perfect time. It just works on so many different levels. And look, the moment that sealed Sonny's exit was not in a boardroom somewhere. It was not a discussion between owners or anything. It came in that moment, really, when we all saw him sink to his knees on the turf at the Estadio de San Mamés. What was the evening of May 21st? Of course it was. How can I have just literally spoken about it and forgotten the date already? That night, I think, was the culmination of everything for Sonny. And this desire for a fresh challenge has been kind of growing for some time. And I think lifting that trophy in Bilbao, it was just, let's say, the cherry on the top of a 10-year-old Tottenham cake, is the best way to put it. I think he just achieved everything he needed to achieve at Tottenham. He'd fought, he'd stuck around despite interest from others, and the club obviously wanting to hold on to him as well. And he stuck around and he did what was needed at Tottenham. So when Thomas Frank took the helm at the club, he made a point of phoning all of the senior players. And just essentially, like I've said before, he's a very collaborative guy. He's interested about stuff. He wanted to pick their minds about the club. And I think it soon became apparent to him that the chat with Son was kind of a different kind of chat. From what I understand, the South Korean was the only one of that group of experienced players he spoke to pick up the phone and tell, the Dane that he wanted to leave the club. And I'd imagine Thomas Frank was expecting it because there has been this feeling inside the club for, much of last season that Son had set his mind on a fresh start. Spurs obviously had taken up the option to extend his contract by another 12 months. Just pretty much to ensure that they got some kind of recompense, I guess, when he goes. But the idea certainly around that was that Son had given so much to the club, both on and off the pitch as well. This is a reason that we are here, because of the incredible fan base that Sonny has brought to the club as well. The wonderful Korean people and people across Asia as well that now have an interest in Spurs. Whether the club will retain, how many they will retain of them when Sonny moves on, we'll see. But certainly they will have gained so much from Sonny's time off the pitch as well as on. I'd say mostly on the pitch. He's just been an incredible player. But I think the point was that he's done so much for the club that he kind of deserved to lead the direction of what comes next. And after a decade of service, Spurs were willing to be flexible, I think, over the price, the timing of the deal, the destination of his exit as well. Because don't forget, there was interest from a lot of clubs, but there was interest from Saudi Pro League clubs. And that obviously could have presumably resulted in more lucrative offers coming in for Sonny as well. And look, Sonny I don't think was as opposed to such a move as he was in the past, but I think the idea that appealed to him the most, I know it is the case, was the move to LAFC in MLS. Joining up with his former captain at Tottenham, Hugo Lloris. And it shouldn't be kind of forgotten that LA contains the largest Korean population within the USA, and the USA itself, from what I understand, contains the largest Korean population outside of here, Korea. So it's kind of a home away from home for him, which is something that can't be underestimated as well. And I do also think that kind of a move to MLS, I might have said this before, it kind of takes him into a league. It's got Lionel Messi in that league. And that opportunity, I think, to be in front of what is definitely a growing American audience with the sport. It's a constantly evolving and growing audience over there with MLS. And of course, next year they've got the World Cup as well, which always gives things a bit of a boost. So talks between LAFC and Spurs progressed kind of around the win against Arsenal on Thursday, and have continued in the days since as Spurs have arrived here in Seoul. And they've obviously reached a stage where Sonny felt comfortable enough to begin telling his teammates about what was going to happen, his decision. And look, his close friends already knew what was coming. Sonny's best friend, we know this, is Ben Davies. If you're not aware, Sonny is godfather to his son Ralph. He was at his wedding. They are besties, as much as besties can be. And the two of them had discussed their future long ago, because they're in the same situation. Ben Davies has also had the option taken up to tag another 12 months on the end of his contract as well. At the moment, I think it looks like he's probably staying at Spurs. But, I spoke to him the other day. It's a really interesting interview. He's such a great guy to talk to. Check my social media accounts. It's kind of plus, although from a couple of days ago. He was brilliant. And he was very honest about his future and the fact that he just doesn't really know what's going to happen next. But I think from what I understand within the club, I think he could be one that's sticking around. But obviously the transfer window, who knows what's going to happen. We'll see on that. But, when it comes to Sonny, I think Sonny was just making sure that his friends knew about his decision and what he was going to do before he took to the stage today. The press conference was held at technically IFC 2. There's like a tower. Spurs a hotel here, and they're kind of surrounded by, underneath it is a mall, and it's got these three different kind of big officey towers as well. And Sonny was up at the top of one of those doing this press conference, as he does every single time Spurs to come to Korea. It is always Sonny up there in the press conference. Big room full of journalists and local media, and just a very, very few of us local, maybe actually just the two of us. Yeah, I think it was just Jay and I were the only kind of English journalists in the room covering Tottenham anyway. And yeah, it was meant to be obviously a press conference to talk about the pre-season match against Newcastle on Sunday, but it became anything but. Unless you were the person that asked Thomas Frank his first question, which, yeah. But, have a look at the transcript for that one. What was the time? The time was 10 o'clock for us here in Seoul. 2 a.m. for everyone in the UK. So many of you probably woke up to this news, I would imagine. And it was really interesting the way to do it. So what they do over here with press conferences, which is quite, I think it's something that's often done outside. I think they do it in kind of certain American sports as well, is that the person who's about to do the press conference gets a chance to speak first before any questions are asked. So the kind of moderator turned to Sonny, who kind of took this quite a breath, and in his very trademark polite manner said, "Before we start, I just want to share the information I've decided to leave this club this summer. Respectfully, the club is helping me to make my decision. I just want to share this before we start." And so we, as the two English journalists there, were waiting for the translated version of that because he said it in Korean. And we were like, oh, is he going to confirm what we've written? Was he going to confirm what we've written? And he did. And it was like this moment of excitement. He confirmed what we've written, but also incredible sadness that we were going to lose Sonny, of course. And then I got the chance to ask him, again, incredibly privileged to be part of this kind of moment for him. I asked him just how difficult was it to make that decision after, 10 years of, like I said at the start of this, giving us these wonderful memories in Tottenham. And he told me it was the most difficult decision of my career. I've been here for 10 years. It's a beautiful club with beautiful fans. I have such amazing memories. It was so hard to make the decision. I just felt like I needed a new environment to push myself to get more out of me. I think I needed a little bit of change. 10 years is a long time. I came to North London as a kid, 23 years old, a very young age, a boy who couldn't speak English. I leave this club as a grown man. Thank you to all the Spurs fans who have given me so much love. It felt like it was my home. It was one of the toughest decisions I've ever made, and I think it was the right time. It is the right time to leave. I hope that everyone understands that and respect that. He just absolutely nailed it. He did. No one's going to ever be angry with Sonny anyway, but he just, and bear in mind that was off the cuff. He wasn't reading something. He'd obviously prepared slightly in his mind the kind of things he was going to say. And always I say with players like this is not their native language. I always think it's so incredible when in another language, and we know Sonny speaks a number of different languages, and he can communicate in that kind of beautiful way of explaining why he's leaving the club. I just thought it was, again, so absolutely perfect. And there were times at the press conference this morning when I felt he was teetering on the edge of breaking into tears. I did. I thought there was a couple of moments where he just kind of had to collect himself. And I think especially when he was talking about his friends at the club as well, I've got the quote here. He said, "I spoke with only a few guys, ones I've spent a long time with. Obviously, they're disappointed. As a friendship or as a teammate, you'd be very disappointed if someone decided to leave, but in a respectful way. Obviously, I'm very close with Ben, so we've spoken about the future a lot of times. He fully respects my decision. So does everyone. What can I say? It's very, very hard to tell my teammates because I sometimes probably spend more time with them than my family because we're travelling together, spending time together every single day at the training ground, 5 or 6 hours every day, and I think we know each other so well. So everybody was disappointed, but also in a way very happy for me. That was my feeling, but I don't know exactly what they were feeling. They seemed happy but disappointed when I told them my decision." And I kind of felt, again, watch the video back, this is just my opinion. I felt that as the press conference wore on, I felt he kind of smiled more and more. It was almost like he was the old Sonny. He's felt a little bit withdrawn, and some Korean fans have said kind of quite sad looking on this tour and not his usual self. And this felt like the old Sonny. It was almost like a release of this information, and kind of taken this huge burden off of his shoulders. And yeah, I just really felt that. But again, watch it for yourself. Don't take my opinion for it in any shape or form. That was my feeling. And yeah, just release for him. And look, some of his teammates and the coaching staff at Tottenham sensed months ago what was coming this summer. Son was utterly committed to what Spurs were trying to do last season and making sure that it was a success in some way. But those closest to him just noticed this slight difference. Even if it was just like this kind of 1% change in the way he viewed things and did things. Of course, we know injuries hampered his what will be now his final campaign at the club. He was often playing through pain. We cannot underestimate how much that man plays through some kind of little injury or trouble, or sometimes a bigger injury that needs fixing later in the season. We've had a few of those over the years at Spurs. But he just wanted to continue to try to drive the team on, even if he knew that he probably wasn't being able to contribute as much as he would have liked to. And I should stress, there's this kind of misconception that Sonny is like, how do I put this? Not the most vocal captain. That he's like almost like a leader by example, like someone like Ledley perhaps was back in the day, Ledley King. But in fact, from everything I understand by talking to loads of people that have kind of been in that dressing room alongside him, been in that club alongside him, he is a talker. And from everything I've heard from, within that dressing room, his greatest strength as captain has been unifying the squad, which is a massive thing, really, because he's this kind of ever-smiling presence when he's around the club that will always be putting his arm around someone. And it could be anyone. It could be another leader type like Christian Romero. It could be, I don't know, someone young in the team like Mikey Moore perhaps. Or it could be an even younger person that's just stepped up for their first ever kind of training day with the first team from the academy. Sonny will be there and welcoming and bringing them into it and making them feel a part of that. He just is a guy who's got time for everyone and he brings everyone together. And look, let's not beat around the bush here. Spurs have some fractured squads over the years, little cliques and arguments that ran really deep. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Sonny's time as captain has probably coincided with the squad being the closest it's been probably since Poch's time. In previous years, I know this for a fact from people that had kind of been in and around it, that the squad would kind of gather in these little kind of groups, I guess, like the Spanish speakers, perhaps the South Americans within that, the French speaking players as well, and the English lads in their own kind of contingents as well. There'd be a little crossover and stuff, but sometimes you would find that it would be in these different places. But with someone like Sonny, he's got the ability to bounce between all of the groups, and he is obviously seen as a legend to so many of them, but also a friend. And I think he is this wonderful glue that kind of gelled them all together. And I remember, I think it was Postecoglou said, you might remember this, when Sonny was out for a period of time, Christian Romero felt he had to step up and be that man who was going between all the groups trying to bring them together, because he realised instantly, we don't have Sonny doing this. We don't have someone that's bringing us all together. And it is this key thing that he brings to a squad. And there is no way that a team that suffered the amount of problems that Spurs did last season, the injuries and the defeats as well, the dreadful league form, would have been able to win the Europa League if they weren't behind all of that. This really tightly knit kind of band of brothers, as it were. You can't, if you've just got an assembly of individuals, you're not going to win things. We know that in football. The teams that have kind of sometimes got all these big stars but are a bunch of individuals, they don't win stuff. And that was why I think Spurs finally ended that trophy drought, was because they had this very tight-knit group of players. And don't forget how young that group is as well. He played a huge part, I think, Sonny, in kind of focusing this really young group in the task at hand, and that Europa League especially. And from what I understand, there was this one really difficult point during the season for Spurs when there was all this negativity around from the media, of course myself included in all of that, hammering the club for these really substandard, poor Premier League performances. And from what I understand, Sonny called a meeting of the players at half-time. At Hotspur Way, not at half-time. He called a meeting one day at Hotspur Way, and during it he just made it really clear to them, left nobody any doubt that they had to stick together, how important it was that they were one rather than bits and pieces. And I think it just had this great effect within the club, as well as especially the squad, as this kind of really important show of leadership at this really crucial time. And I think many people, from what I understand, saw it as this kind of defining moment, not only in his captaincy, but I think in galvanising this beaten, battered, injury-riddled side into what would eventually set them on the path to, winning the trophy. So while there's this kind of disappointment at Sonny's exit, especially among his friends at Spurs, I think, of course, about losing this kind of grinning force of nature within the squad. There is this happiness, I think, for him to experience something new. Look, you're losing a top player. You're losing a player who is still, especially when he's injury-free, one of the best there is around in what he does. But ultimately, he's deserved this chance to have something new. He really, really has. I do believe it's a perfect move for him. I've said this before. I think the MLS has been perfect for Messi in just the certain aspect of, think about this for a minute, bear with me. When Messi does something brilliant, we all see it. We know it. Social media suddenly showed us all these clips of these wonderful goals that Messi scored, this wonderful moment, this free kick, this pass, whatever. We don't get to see when Messi has a poor game. We don't get to see if age is kind of catching up with Messi in any way. We don't see the bad bits unless you are religiously and consistently watching Inter Miami's matches. You just don't see it, because whereas the Premier League is this forensically kind of over-analysed league, and as people like myself make a living out of that, that's my job, I'm a journalist. But mostly MLS, for people over here, you're probably watching little bits and glimpses of highlights. And for Sonny, we're going to have so many of those. We're going to get to see how he's doing. We're all going to be like, how wonderful that Sonny is doing that over there. And I just think it allows him to kind of get out of the spotlight to a degree, but also just kind of bring what he's got, this wonderful way about him, to a whole new kind of culture, lifestyle, and league. And I think he'll be really refreshed and energized for the World Cup, which is great. And of course, this looks like tomorrow, unless you're watching this on Sunday, is going to be, you would think, his final match. I mean, those talks have been progressing with LAFC. I would be surprised that even if they're not done by the time the Bayern game comes around, why risk him? Why risk the potential of injury? There's no need to really send him to Germany. And it is also a time, I guess, for Thomas Frank to probably start looking at other players. And you've got to start planning for a future without Sonny. So I would imagine that we're going to see Sonny's last game tomorrow in a Spurs shirt, which, again, a huge, huge privilege for me to be there and witness it and report on it. I think there's something kind of beautifully poetic about it all. He gets this huge send-off in front of, I think it's 66,000 fans in a sellout crowd, his own country's fans inside the Seoul World Cup Stadium, huge occasion. But actually it also means his final competitive game for the Tottenham faithful back home was Bilbao. It was that night in Bilbao. And I just think that's just so beautifully poetic that that's the way it is. His kind of official final game is in front of all of his home land and the fans and everything. But his actual game in front of those Spurs fans, the week in, week out fans, or certainly those who could travel to Bilbao, was, that incredible night. And I just think that's beautiful. It really is. And you think back to that night, and I mentioned right at the top of that, as he kind of sank to his knees on that turf, and we saw him crying tears of joy. I think it probably all hit him in one go, didn't it? There's the relief, the pride, and the knowledge that I think he could move on and have left Tottenham Hotspur in a better place than when he found it, as winners, as trophy winners. Because, we've had 454 appearances from Sonny, 173 goals, 101 assists. Sonny had led Spurs to a European title. The trophy drought was over. Essentially, his job was done. He's come. He has been there. He's provided us with so many wonderful moments. Golden Boot winner, Puskas Award winner for that wonderful goal as well against Burnley, and his partnership with Harry Kane was just incredible. That season, when he was playing a kind of ahead of Kane coming back. That was just beautiful. That was a player, in his absolute prime. It was just so beautiful to watch. So absolutely, his job is done at Spurs. Thank you so much, Sonny. Thank you personally for being able to report on him, but just as a Tottenham fan as well, to have witnessed him. He is right up there with my favourite Spurs players of all time, if not right up the top. And I actually should also mention Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank was in the press conference too, and I just thought he handled it, really well. What could have been really awkward for him, don't forget. He's coming in as the new guy. This is someone that wants to leave, and he could look at this in a million different ways, but he didn't. He looked at it in a really good way, and I got to ask him the first question about Sonny and just his reaction to it all. I've just realised I'm still wearing the media kind of thing that we have to have on us for all of today's event. So I'm kind of commemorating the moment without even thinking about it. So yeah, Thomas Frank, I asked him and he said, for me personally, I would love to work with him. He's a fantastic person and player. I've had the opportunity to watch him from a distance. He's been here 10 years at Spurs. Not just 10 years, but 10 amazing years. He's truly a Spurs legend in every aspect. I actually think one of the best players who's ever played in the Premier League as a winger, in my opinion. I like that the club has been open to it because it's never easy to find that perfect timing. And me coming in a little bit from the side, I think it's probably the perfect time and going out on a high. He's been here 10 years, won a well-deserved trophy, been a key player for many seasons. It's almost the perfect ending to a happy family. And he also told us about Sonny's role in tomorrow's game against Newcastle. And he said, I think it's very clear. It's no secret Sonny will start and he'll lead the team out as captain. So I'm looking forward to that in many ways. And if it is to be the last game for Sonny, what a place to do it in South Korea. His home country in front of his home fans. That could potentially be a beautiful ending. First and foremost, with the biggest respect to Sonny and what he's done for the club. So yeah, honestly, what a day. What an incredible day. And that was just my early morning. There's been so much that's happened since then as well. Obviously had to write so many Sonny articles. I've kind of had to push a load of interviews that I've done over the recent days to the side. I've stockpiled them and have to work my way through them. The ones that have gone out, if you want to kind of look them up, I've done Ben Davis, like I said earlier, was really good. Matisse Tell, Will Lancashire one, which is lovely. Have a read of that as well. He spoke so well for a 20-year-old kind of newbie that's only kind of played a handful of games for Spurs. He spoke so well. Who else have I spoken to that's in the bag and I've still got to write? Brennan Johnson. Mohamed Kudus as well. Spoke to him after the Arsenal game. Spoke to today after Sonny's press conference. Spoke to Vicario. Spoke to Kevin Danso as well. I've also got a Ledley King interview that was actually good fun as well. And actually, like it wouldn't be, it's got a load of really good stuff in it too. I really need to start writing them all up. Sorry for the shiny head. It's a very warm country, and I've had to turn the aircon off because it was so loud. That's all you'd hear in this video. So you are going to see me sweat as this video goes on. I'm sorry for that. What else did I have? Oh, later in the day, Spurs, essentially, I guess, is the final over open training session. We'll see Sonny take part in the Spurs show. There's so many kind of final things. It's really, yeah, it's pretty sad. It really is. Thomas Frank took them. They had to go to this stadium that was it was a fair old trek. It was more than an hour away from the team's hotel and the press conference venue alongside it. They were in front of, I think it was 8,000 fans at what's called where I've got to get written down here, Anyang Sport Complex. And yeah, look, this was going to be a bit of a Sonny Road show as well, of course. Fans were all there to see Spurs players, but of course, mainly him. He was cheered every time he touched the ball. They let out this roar when he kind of ran on and scored a goal. Nobody really noticed or cared that one of the coaches had like a bib up as a flag to say it was offside, so it hadn't counted. But it was just lovely to see him score this really nice finish in the bottom corner as well. Yeah, the fans were just, they were there. They were, what were they doing? They were trying to get things signed. They were trying to take selfies of themselves, even just with him in the background. I know you take a selfie of yourself. There was a drone flying over. I wasn't entirely sure whether it was a drone that a fan had put up there, whether it was a drone from security to keep an eye on things, or whether it was a Spurs coaching staff drone where they could kind of look at the session. But it definitely seemed to be over in the stadium side rather than the pitch side. Yeah, it was mad. And there was this incredibly funny moment when I was like, whoa, when I saw this person, and I wasn't aware of him before this. He was 7'1", huge guy, this Korean mixed martial arts star. I think he's in his 40s, called Choi Heung-min, who was taking selfies with all the Spurs players and staff and Thomas Frank as well. And Sonny came over and he picked him up and cradled him like a baby. It is incredible. If you see the footage, watch it. Sonny just kind of does this and starts giggling. It is so funny. And there's loads of other little things. I think he picked Madders up and put him in a headlock at one point. Will Lancashire kind of did some like shadow boxing with him, or sparring kind of thing with him. Richie looked at him, looked absolutely terrified when he saw him. It's just really funny. He is just, I don't know how anyone fought him. I think he was a kickboxer and MMA. Honestly, if you saw him in the ring, you'd just be like, nah, you're right. Just take the title, that's fine. It was very, very funny. The fans were waiting long after. We were kind of there quite a while, writing up things after training session. The fans were there for ages. In terms of training session itself, just away from Sonny, I know he's kind of dominating everything, quite rightly so. No Dominic Solanke. Thomas Frank said about him, Dominic is unfortunately not quite ready. He's taking it a little bit longer. He's taking slightly longer. Again, not overly concerned, but he's not available for the Newcastle game. Everyone else looks good. A few tired bodies naturally after the game against Arsenal and travelling to Seoul. But touch wood, everyone is good. So yeah, it's not great with Solanke. I think I asked Thomas Frank the other day about him, and he said if he wasn't going to be ready for Newcastle, then he would definitely be there for Bayern. So we'll see. But obviously, you want your kind of big main striker to be, to be fit and available, especially when you've got the Super Cup coming up. You don't really want him going into it off the back of, some pre-season minutes earlier. The first game, wasn't it, against Reading? Was that 45 minutes? And then not really doing anything until playing Bayern ahead of the Super Cup. It's not great. I mean, thankfully, touch wood, Richarlison is currently playing and he looks like he's getting sharper and physically well. So hopefully he's okay. What else in training session? Oh, they had a training match towards the end, which they often do in these open ones. Two very distinct starting 11s in it. The base kind of 4-2-3-1 to it, but they kind of switched into other formations during it. If you want to know the two teams, I wrote them down. The team without Bibbs was Kinski in goal, back four of Porro Romero, Danso Davis, midfield duo of Bentancur and Gray, and then you had Brennan Johnson, Pat Matasar and Sonny behind Matisse Tell. So I don't know whether that will be the lineup or not. And then you've got the Bibb side with the Bibbs on it. Vicario, George Abbott at right back, Vuskovic, Van der Ven, Jed Spence. Then you've got Lucas Bergvall, Basuma in the middle with Kudus, Madison, Odegaard behind Richarlison. I don't know whether it's going to be one of those or it's going to be a blend. I would imagine that a fair chunk of the players that played against Arsenal probably won't start and he'll look at some others. But he might find that some of them maybe play a little bit longer. We'll see. I was trying to think of who came off when in that game. But look, it was just quite interesting because I think it finished 0-0 again, the training match, which it did in the open training in Hong Kong as well. I don't know if that's a good thing or because of like defensive structure is working really well, or it's a bad thing that they couldn't find a way to score a goal. Sonny's was obviously the main chance, which was flagged offside. What else happened? I was trying to think. They did a possession drill to begin with two teams in a square, which had the goalkeepers in there using their feet as well. There was a big bit of corner practice towards the end. This massive packed box of players. And every scenario they did, Thomas Frank would blow the whistle after they worked through loads of different things. One person who wasn't involved in that actually was Yves Basuma. There was like a sports science staff guy who was taking him on these runs, like shuttle runs up and down the other half of the pitch. I don't know whether that was because did he only play 15 minutes against Arsenal, I think? So they were kind of maybe just fine-tuning his fitness, getting him ready. I presume that means he was going to start against Newcastle. And then after that, it kind of seemed to be this period of free time where they were able to do what they wanted. So you got some players did shooting practice, some just did QP-uppies in a circle. I saw Luka Vuskovic and Antonin Kinski have this kind of little kind of thing they were doing between each other. I feel like Kinski drives Vuskovic in to training, and I could be wrong, but I think that's what he does. So I think they've become that little bit closer as well. There was Jed Spence was at one end of the pitch, pinging in corners to Wilson Odegaard to try and hit first time into the goal. Shooting practice. Will Lancashire was on fire. He had the crowd gasping at what he was doing. He hit this one rocket shot that kind of hit the crossbar and went in. His very next shot, he ran up and dinked the ball over the goalkeeper's lovely little chip. It'll be interesting to see if he gets any minutes because he wasn't even part of the squad, the matchday squad. on Thursday. I've lost all track of time. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see for him. And oh yeah, we haven't even spoken about the match really in Hong Kong yet. Spurs won a North London derby, albeit a friendly one, as if you can have a friendly. But it was the first ever North London derby played outside of the UK. It was very interesting to watch because I think, it was Thomas Frank's first ever North London derby, but it was not really what anyone imagined. Be honest with yourself. You were probably expecting Spurs to be spanked. Let's be honest. I wasn't too optimistic for it myself, having kind of seen how disjointed they looked in the early games of pre-season. And look, I know it was never going to be a friendly affair. We call it a friendly, but it was never going to be with a derby. It was a stadium record crowd of 49,975 in the Kai Tak Stadium, which was a very cool stadium in that it was all covered, so it was aircon, which was lovely, and as you can see from my sweaty face now, much needed. But it had this amazing concourse at one end as well, which was an open concourse, and you had this big window, a little bit like you see on the inside of the South Stand at Spurs, on the other side of the actual pitch side. But this view was just across Hong Kong. It's a beautiful view. But this was not a friendly. There was tackles flying in from all sides. Christian Romero nutmegged Kai Havertz, who then slid in and absolutely wiped out Jed Spence. We had Pedro Porro pushing Mikel Arteta away because he was doing that annoying thing when he can't stay anywhere near his technical area and he couldn't take a throw in. And Richarlison. Richarlison, you know what Richarlison does. He was doing a lot of it. I'm not going to say the word, but he was doing it. And like I said, I think a lot of people, and myself included, probably thought that on paper Arsenal would steamroll Spurs. They got that 200 million plus summer spending out there. They had Christian Norgard started the game of the new signings, Christian Mosquera, Victor Gyökeres, Martin Zubimendi all came off the bench. So they had all of this kind of strength to bring on, and we were obviously a little bit worried about Spurs. They've got a few injuries again, and like I said, disjointed performances in the first few games, and just hadn't really seen too many patterns of play. And lo and behold, Spurs were pretty good in terms of definitely a sound structure to the team. I think Arsenal probably started the brightest, but then Spurs from that point on were the best kind of that in the half. I mean, they hit the woodwork 3 times in the first half. And then the winning goal. It was something special just before half-time. A pre-season beauty, if you will. Probably would have been ruled out in the Premier League, if I'm completely honest. Richarlison brought down Miles Lewis-Skelly. But look, don't let that detract from the technique that Pat Matasar showed when he saw Raya off his line and just clipped this beautiful ball over him. It was just inside the Arsenal half. So I don't think it was as far as Harry Kane's beauty against, was it Juventus? Where was that? Was that Singapore? I'm trying to remember. It feels like it was a long time ago, but it kind of did give me some memories of that. Second half, look, neither side created much. It was second halves in friendlies. They're always dominated by the amount of changes that are made and the rhythm kind of goes out the window. But Spurs probably still had the best chance of the second half. Matisse Tell did well, got to the byline, pinged the ball across. Mickey van der Ven was in the box and headed it wide from a really good position. So really, it probably should have been 2-0. And I just thought it was really interesting. You could see some of the things we've seen in the training videos being put into practice on the pitch. So I don't know if you've seen the video where all of the players, and we're not even just talking defenders, but midfielders, attackers as well, have to do this individual drill where they stand in front of 2 or 3 mini goals, and different coaches from different sides smash the ball very quickly at the goals, and they've got to either kind of just react to it, block it, slide in front of it, just stop any balls going into those little nets. And you I think it's become a bit of a competition behind the scenes as well. You can see they really get into it. And I think the idea really is that anyone in a Thomas Frank team has got to, at a split second's notice, be willing to put their body on the line, throw themselves into the ball to stop that ball going into the net. And I just felt it was on full display against Arsenal, because everything that Arsenal tried to do, it had a Spurs foot, knee, thigh, backside, back, front, head, whatever you want on it. They did it. And I just thought it was there. And I actually asked Thomas Frank after the game about it. I said, look, I've watched these videos of training and these little things you do. And I said, it must have been just wonderful this early on to see that reflected in a match and reaping the rewards of those sessions. And he said, yeah, that's very pleasing, of course. I think we've been very clear that this was not friendly. It felt like a competitive match. And I think you saw it was competitive. And if you played in it, it was competitive. Some of the bits we've been working hard on is the combination of defensive organisation. So high pressure, middle, low. So there are clear principles and that desire to keep a clean sheet because that gives you a bigger opportunity to win matches. And when he said that bit about defensive organisation, you bang the table. I think that's a trait of his. I think we're going to get that quite a lot. I think he kind of really wants to emphasise that defensive organisation kind of thing. And he said, I think for the team we're building together, all the positive results or performances, you can just reinforce the messages we try to get into the players and the team feel that. That desire to defend was good. First half in general, we played very good overall. Second half, I felt we defended a bit too much, but that was good. And the set pieces, I think, were good as well. We defended very well, but were also dangerous. And look, I felt this was another disciplined 1-0 victory. That brought silverware, albeit, yeah, okay, it was the Herbology Trophy. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Not quite the Europa League, but, you know, it's another trophy. And it was kind of weird that we had that moment where, and I've seen this before, where the kind of Tottenham players, when they win a pre-season trophy, it's a little bit like, what do we do? What do we do here? Do we celebrate this like it's like a big thing out of respect for the people that have organised this, or do we kind of also think it's okay, it's not that big a thing? And it was quite an interesting little moment. As captain for the day was Romero, and in those final bits where they were going to go over and pick up this funny looking trophy thing, I think it's presumably the logo of Herbology, I presume. He kind of went over to Sonny and went like, no, and took off the captain's armband and was trying to put him on. Sonny was resisting quite a lot. I have a drink of water to maybe cool me down. He was kind of resisting quite a bit. And eventually Romero put it on there. And I think it was probably a combination of everything, wasn't it? It was probably a bit of, I don't really want to be the guy that goes up there and doesn't quite know the level of celebration needed for this. It was probably a little bit of respect just purely for Son, but also now we know what we know, probably a little bit of like, well, Sonny can lift the trophy, another little trophy as well as part of his thing. But it was quite funny to watch. It was quite funny to watch. And like I said, positives from the match. I think definitely the patterns of play were really good. They're starting to show that now, which is a big thing missing for me in the games against the League One sides. I like the 4-2-3-1, which obviously is a big thing of the past for us. We saw a lot under Poch especially, and some of the other managers that came next. But I think it protects the back line that bit more. You know, there were some hairy moments last season, of course, and it protects them that little bit more. But what I would say is one danger of it, which I saw a couple of times, is that if the three behind the striker push away too much, push too advanced, there can be a big gap between the two kind of pivots, anchormen, whatever you want to call them, that little bit further back. There can be a big old gap of space. And I felt that at times Arsenal really used that space. Obviously Spurs did well kind of when they got any closer, but still, I think the movement of the number 10 is going to be key to Thomas Frank's system. It really is. Another positive, set pieces. Andreas Georgsson obviously has come in charge of those, and you can see the work he's done at both ends of the pitch. Looked very good caused all kinds of problems from attacking set pieces, and looked really organised, especially when bearing in mind Arsenal, one of the best free kick kind of sides going right now. They do this thing where they just suddenly throw a million people in a line at you. And Spurs dealt with it really, really well. They were absolutely prepared up to the eyeballs for it. And I just think they kind of, they did look a threat from set pieces, really, by themselves, Spurs as well. And I think the back four individually as a unit looked really good. I thought Romero led the line well. And I kind of feel like he's been quite a vocal presence on this tour. I've seen a lot of him really kind of talking to players. I think this summer so far as well. And look, it might be me massively reading too much into it, and it is purely from me watching on. It's not from me kind of knowing anything at all. I just feel like he's someone that maybe is preparing to become captain of Spurs. Maybe. If Sonny's going to leave, then they're going to have to pick someone. For me, I think it's a no-brainer that it should be Christian Romero as the World Cup winner, the biggest winner of the side, and someone that the other players will really look up to. So yeah, he looked really, really good. He handled the game so well. I thought Mickey van de Ven looks like he's in a good place physically. I thought Porro looked pretty comfortable with this kind of the role of the fullback in the Frank system. So the Frank system at the back is a little bit like Mourinho's back defensive thing in terms of it's normally one fullback pushed on, and then the other three kind of come across and almost make a back four. So you might remember, I think Mourinho said, didn't he, that how important Ben Davies was going to be to him because he would be able to make that back three in possession with the fullback able to push on one side. And yeah, Porro dealt with not bombing on all the time quite well and actually defending, which obviously is one thing he sometimes gets criticised for. On the other side, we had Jed Spence. Destiny Doggy has this knee injury, which is, it's not a great thing. Obviously, Destiny's not had the best of luck with injuries, of course, but Jed looked good again on the left. I still maintain I think he's better on the left. I do. I mean, in the Frank system, he may also work very well on the right, but I thought he dealt really well with Bukayo Saka on the whole. And look, talks are in the early stages for a new deal for Jed as well, which will be his second new contract within 12 months. And I think it's testament to his hard work because, let's be honest, his Spurs career was kind of heading towards the dustbin, wasn't it? And he has grabbed it out of there through his own sheer will. And he's turned his Spurs career around. It's fantastic. Talking of contract, I think Rodrigo Bentancur is obviously playing his way towards a new contract as well. Thomas Frank's kind of made it very clear what he thinks of him since he's come in. And Pat Matsar, again, he's someone that Thomas Frank told me that has caught his eye. I asked him about the goal and he said an unbelievable goal, fantastic, well taken, all the credit to Pat. He has impressed me, I must admit. He's been really good in the past 4 weeks. Kudus, I thought, was just so exciting. He's going to be one we're really going to enjoy watching, aren't we? He's such a handful, and Arsenal were just like, they just couldn't deal with it. Every time they got the ball, there were kind of about 2 or 3 players around him, which is going to leave space for other players. You can see that Thomas Frank really likes him as well. And also another aspect to his game as well. He said, I think he was really good today, Kudus. His hold-up play, the way he takes hold of the ball in tricky situations, his 1v1 skills, creating opportunities for the team was top class. But on top of that, I think he's working extremely hard. And there was a recovery run from set piece when he was straining all the way back and he won the ball back. That's how he can help the team so much. He'll make a lot of the fans excited with his offensive actions, and he will also help the team defensively. I think he's exciting. And we did a good interview with him, which I still have to write up. He's very confident in his ability, which is great. And he's very excited about what he can do at Spurs as well. You kind of think it feels like it's a big level for him to kind of step up to now and show everyone what he's got. Sorry, I can feel my voice is starting to go creaky and croaky. Wilson Odegaard, I thought he had some nice moments. That he looked really good in moments. I still want him to kind of get a bit stronger on the ball. I think there's times he's knocked off it a little bit too easy, but he did well, especially one deflected shot that hit the post. I thought Tell did well when he came on as well. Looked strong, looked direct. Created that big chance for Mickey van der Ven. Lucas Bergvall. Yeah, he was pushed into this number 10 role, and I thought sometimes he got stuck higher up the pitch, sometimes he was stuck a little bit further. He wasn't quite sure entirely where he needs to be, but that's a young player getting used to a new system. And I would say, though, one sloppy pass aside that I remember, I thought he kind of gave Arsenal a lot of issues and things to deal with. Richarlison, like I said earlier, pain-free and looks like he's making an impact really every time he's available. We know he can do that. There was quite a few moments where Thomas Frank was talking to players on the sideline, and he was actually asked about that afterwards. I've got the quote here. He was asked, what were you saying? He said, a few different bits. It could be in our phase 1 building up. We wanted Mickey a little bit lower, so there was an out ball that way. Or it could be if we go a little bit longer, we want Lucas higher. So it was mostly tactical instructions. I think that's going to be quite a cool thing for him. Some managers can be a little bit like, who are you asking questions about tactics, you journalist scum? Whereas I get the impression with Thomas Frank that he's quite enjoys talking about tactics. So that'll be fascinating for press conferences as well. And look, I should stress, despite me saying that how pleased I was with the and not that it matters that I'm pleased with it, I'm sure most people was, beating Arsenal when we thought it was going to be a different kind of match. Again, the result isn't hugely important, but the performance was. But that shouldn't detract from the fact that this Spurs squad does not have the quality yet to compete across 4 competitions with the Premier League and Champions League, not Championship. We don't want a Championship. Premier League and Champions League every couple of days. It needs more to it. Of course it does. It needs increased quality, and it also needs some of those around the edges of it removed, I think, as well. And we know selling players has been an Achilles heel for the club for a long time. It's weird because the squad is so big that I think because they were giving most players 75 minutes, some of them got 90. The younger players, like I said earlier, Lancashire, Janai Byfield as well, Luca Gunter, they weren't even in the matchday squad. And from what I understand, they had their own kind of intensive session at the training ground early in the day to kind of keep them ticking over. And of course, Mikey Moore, you might have seen, Mikey Moore has now gone to Rangers, which is a great loan. It's going to give him the regular football to develop. They play a style of football that will suit him down to the ground. It's going to get more European experience as well. And he's under that bit of scrutiny. Some big games, big crowds, old firm derbies as well. I think he's going to get a lot of football as well, which would be great. And I think he'll get this new contract, which will come. I think it has to come on his 18th birthday as well. So, yeah, I don't think you can sign a long-term contract unless you're 18, I think. So keep an eye on his birthday, which is coming up quite soon, I think. It's this month. I'd imagine we'll see a whole raft of loan moves in the next week when the players are all kind of back in England. I would imagine you'll probably see, probably Jamie Donnelly heads out on loan. Will Lancashire probably heads out on loan. Imagine there's a couple of Championship loans there. George Abbott will head off as well. I think Heung-min will head out again as well. Alfie Devine, Dane Scarlett were left behind, so they could find new loans as well. I'd maybe keep an eye out for a few others, but we'll talk about that in another video coming up. We should have a new face at Spurs in the very near future, and that is Bayern Munich midfielder Joao Palhinha. We spoke about him in the last video, but now that looks like it is almost there. Very, very close to being almost there. And look, Thomas Frank wanted kind of a specialist number 6 in the middle of that midfield. Look, I think the midfield he's got are kind of more all-round ones. Ooh, you might be able to hear police cars in the distance. That deal is all but done. I think it'll be announced sooner rather than later. I don't even know whether it'll be not long after this goes up or whether it'll be tomorrow or not. But we're going to have this funny situation, I guess, like Josh Keeley immediately playing Spurs after signing for Luton. We'll get Joao Palhinha could well be facing Bayern just after leaving Bayern. Look, I think we maybe mentioned this in the last video. Spurs were always looking really to try and do a loan deal for him rather than a big fee up front, because this is a player, if you look at it on paper, he didn't start a lot of matches in the Bundesliga last year. He had a serious injury that kept him out for about 2.5 months. This is kind of similar, this deal, to the one that Tell really from Bayern, a very similar one in terms of like being a try before you buy of sorts for all parties involved. €30 million option, it looks like it's going to be at the end of the season. And look, if Spurs get the Joao Palhinha that shone for Fulham, who was a brilliant player at Fulham, it's going to look like a bargain, that. What is he? Yeah, like I said, 30-year-old. I think Spurs are covering the wages. He's a tough tackler. He's got his composure on the ball. He can start attacks. I think he'll be this really strong, disciplined presence to allow someone like a Bentancur, a Sarr, a Bergvall to kind of get up that pitch. Look, I would imagine, I'd be surprised if Christian Norgard, who Thomas Frank loves, and he embraced him actually at the final whistle after the Arsenal game, would probably have been high up on that list of people he wanted in that role. But I think also Palhinha will bring a lot of similar qualities too. And look, like Kudus, he's a Premier League player ready to kind of come straight in and hit the ground running. And I think also when you take into account his age and the potential, it could potentially be a shorter term deal, it allows like Archie Gray to grow into the role. I've combined all of those words into Archie Gray, another year to develop into the position as well. Personally, I think he probably could do with a loan move somewhere, like maybe a Premier League team to get a regular season of football in that midfield. But I think his versatility and also the aesthetics of loaning out your £40 million second biggest signing of last summer, it's not a good one. It's essentially admitting a £40 million player is not ready to play for your football team yet. But I just think he needs regular football, and he may well get it as the season goes on. But Yeah, I would say probably Palhinha's arrival probably suggests that Spurs are confident of moving Yves Bissouma on this summer. I mean, he's in the final 11 months of his contract, but he'll want to play football as well. And if he's not going to play at Spurs, he's going to have to go somewhere to get it. Whether Spurs are able to get the kind of money they would want for him is a whole other thing. But yeah, you just think like I said, he's made clear Thomas Frank that Bentancur is someone he wants. Sarr, Bergval's ability, he's always big in them as well. You've got Gray. I think it kind of leaves Basuma as the odd man out, unless they were to make the decision to loan out Gray, which wouldn't send a great message. But yeah, they're going to need to start getting players out the door. Of course they are. I'm not even going to go into Champions League numbers and all that sort of stuff. You know my thing, fitting players into just 21 spots in that squad. For the non-club trained players. So yeah, I mean, a number 10 I think is still required as well. Just talking about getting rid of players, I'm going to talk about they couldn't get Morgan Gibbs-White. We saw that quite publicly. There's no Decky for at least the first month of the season. Maddison's just come back, but he's just only played a handful of minutes. And I think the good thing about the Palhinha deal as well is that it's a loan. So that money that they were willing to spend for Morgan Gibbs-White, it's still there. They can sign someone else for that as well. No excuses really not to do so. I would say that, I said this before, but Thomas Frank has kind of ruled out the need for another attacker. We've heard him publicly say that, and so the links to Mawani, Rodrigo, from what I understand, are wide of the mark. I don't think that's any shock to probably a lot of people, but I suppose what probably happens with Richarlison the rest of the summer maybe decides whether they do end up going for another striker. But at the moment, as long as he's fit and playing and nobody's making a big bid for him, then he's probably going to be up there with Solanke as an option. Look, there is an awareness from what I understand around Spurs that the rest of the top of the Premier League have spent far more than in the summer, over the 200 millions rather than the half of that the Spurs have paid. But of course, if they got the Gibbs-White deal over the line, then they would be closer in that kind of spend. And look, I know as well, I'm not offering this up as an excuse, it's just a reality that with a new manager, they've got to appraise their squad, and that probably does lend itself a little bit more to later deals in a window. And I think maybe Postecoglou's first summer was a bit of an aberration in that he was very quick to get in there and moves were made. Whereas I think with Thomas Frank, he's taking that a little bit of time to assess things. But of course, again, Gibbs-White gets done, it's a different story. But yeah, it's for now, I think the best thing for Thomas Frank is that he's starting to get the team to play the kind of football that he wants. That's an important thing. And look, I know it was just a pre-season trophy, but I do think winning is a habit. I think these players getting used to picking up a trophy is an important thing. It becomes instinct. I should say that within Spurs' very luxurious hotel in Hong Kong, between the players' rest area and the dinner area and a room that they use for coaches and staff to have meetings and stuff with the players, but also they would have events there, and that was the room that I went into for a couple of player interviews. In between that, in the corridor, they had what I presume was a replica of the Europa League trophy, and perhaps a certain reporter walked up and had a photo holding it, because I've seen everyone else at Spurs doing it, and I wanted to do it myself. And as I was doing that, or just after I'd done it, Mickey van der Ven emerged from one of the rooms, and he went along and he actually picked up the trophy and he held it aloft and he went like that with it. And it was very funny. And this certain reporter that might have been having a photo with the trophy just before that mentioned to him that this all looks very familiar. I think you've done this before. Which had a big old grin, and obviously he's fully aware that that's what they've done. They've lifted that trophy. They know how to lift a trophy, they know how to do it and get there. I do think it can become instinct, but it's a habit that needs to be built on, and that's not only by Thomas Frank and what he builds in his squad, it's what the club now do in building everything around him, and that includes transfers and getting the right squad for him to be able to compete in the weeks, months, and hopefully years ahead. So yeah, we'll see what happens with it. Spurs back in action, like I say, tomorrow with the game against Newcastle, which looks like it's going to be Sonny's last game. So I'm going to do loads from that as well. That's going to be very emotional. I would imagine we might see a few tears from the man. I might see a few tears from many, to be honest. I think it's midday for you, 8 p.m. for me. It's a night game. I'll be back with another video when I land in the UK, probably some point on Tuesday. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about kind of other stuff. I think Palhinha would have definitely was signed by then, and we can talk about the latest updates with Sonny, but also other players coming into the club and those heading out. Just need my body to readjust to the time zones, right? I was trying to squeeze this under the hour because I knew I had so much to talk about, but hopefully I've given you a sense of what it's like here in Seoul, including the sweat, to show you how warm it is. But hopefully, yeah, you get an idea of kind of, yeah, what it's like over here and what it's been like, and everything that went on. A pretty momentous day as well with Sonny. So there you go. I'm going to head off, whack that air conditioning back on into its highest possible thing. And yeah, keep an eye out, like I said, for loads of interviews. Look at the ones I've already done if you can, and there'll be loads more in the days ahead and plenty of stuff around the match tomorrow. So yeah, I'm going to head off now because it's very late at night and I should definitely be asleep. So yeah, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.